Hey, this is Rob Swanson with the Real Estate Mogul Show. Let's get into it. What's up, everybody? Rob Swanson back here with another episode of the Real Estate Mogul Show. We're going to be diving into round number 2 today, talking about how you should organize before you automate. And one of the big failures that people do in their real estate investing business, because technology makes it so easy to do, and you have to tame the technology. And what you're going to find by going through this show is that when you tame your technology works for you rather than put you in a place that kind of destroys your own success. So we'll be diving into that. We'll be talking about it. We got the crew back here in the studio. Who wants to kick us off here today with a little bit of a hello?
I can do it.
Let's do it.
I mentioned in the last show, I'm getting excited to go to California and going to take that trip and spend time with family and birthdays. And so I'm sure I'll have some good pictures and exciting stories. Then I'm taking a little trip with some friends from San Francisco out to some retreat land in near Watsonville, beautiful California country, and then down to LA for a week. So it's going to be a fun trip.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like it.
Joe had new fresh kicks on today, which I appreciated. They were nice.
Thank you. Appreciate it. These they're kicks that are going to be, here, watch this. I'm not going to spill coffee on you, Henry.
Heads up.
Wow. That should probably never happen again.
Edit that out.
On this show.
Come on, those are nice shoes.
We're going to have to put rules in place.
Oh, boy. They're white and gold because my daughter's golden birthday's coming up. So
Those are cool shoes.
Yep. And I got a golden tuxedo T-shirt because it's a Met Gala-like theme, and I didn't want to dress up. So I'm wearing these kicks and my yellow tuxedo T-shirt.
I like it. Cool. What's going on, guys?
I can go.
Yeah, Henry, go, because I'm looking at these pictures, wishing I was on a fishing trip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know the plan on when this gets released, but we haven't really talked about it in full detail here yet. But I did recently get back from a big family fly fishing trip, 7.5 days through Wyoming, partially into Idaho for a day, and then it ended out in Montana and then back to Denver. So pretty epic trip, a lot of driving. I mean, it was solid. So, I mean, if we're walking through the pictures here, these were not taken by me. These were taken by my very talented brother-in-law named Hudson. He is a production company owner out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Crazy talented photographer and videographer. Shoots commercials for like high-end coffee companies, restaurants out of Charlotte. Like he's just awesome. But yeah, when he goes on trips like these, he brings a very expensive camera and was sitting out in this river with it, and that scared me. But, I mean, it produced some really cool shots, and there's way more, but I just picked some of my favorites. On the left, Mike, you have the fish that my father-in-law got on. It was, like, picturesque. I'll try to be short with this, but I have to tell this story because it was so good. We get into Montana. This is on the Madison River. We get into Montana. Huge rainstorms happened all week while we were in Wyoming. It was happening in Montana. So the Yellowstone was chocolate milk. You couldn't fish it. All the tributaries of the Yellowstone were just terrible. So I called 8 fly shops in the area. I was like, where do we go? Where do we go?
Yeah.
And they were like, you should go to the Madison. So we drive an hour 45 due west across the pass on the other side of Big Sky and fish the Madison River. And man, did it remind me of the South Platte. It was very similar. It fished the same way, which meant that I was going to have to work my butt off to get people on fish. And we're coming up on the end of the day, last hole.
Yep.
I had just pulled a fish out on the other side, closer up to that rock up there.
Okay.
And we're literally about to hike out. We're about to leave. My rod was already tied up.
Right.
And behind me, I hear, Henry, I got one. And granted, this is my father-in-law. He hadn't caught a fish all week yet. He had tried super hard. We had tried to get everyone on fish. And I just look over there, and he's two-handing his rod, and it's bent upside down, and this fish is just running. And I just, like, drop all my stuff on this rock and, like, try not to drown, sprint across this river in my waders, and I'm like coaching him through it, like how to do it, and we net the fish. It was like
Nice.
it was like picture perfect, like Hail Mary, end of the day, beautiful rainbow. It was great, man.
Nice.
Incredible.
And that's the first challenge in fly fishing is getting a fish on, and then the second challenge, which is equal a lot of times.
Yeah.
Especially if you're used to fishing in a lake with heavy gear,
Yeah.
you can't just muscle them in.
Oh no,
So
it's there's a
it's an
finesse
art.
about it.
Right,
There's a
right.
finesse about it.
No doubt.
And yeah, it was just so good to peek across the river, and he's like two-hand fighting this like really
So-
good sized rainbow.
So I have a question. In the picture to the right, it's either a lot of fish rising, or it's sprinkling a little bit of water.
So it was raining here.
Okay.
It was drizzling that day. This was our first day. This was our best day. This is actually 6 days before the picture on the left. This is back in Wyoming on the Grays River, which is a tributary of the Snake.
Yep.
And this is me. I think I was walking. That's my brother-in-law Josh. I'm walking him through this really good section of water. You can see the riffles and the fast moving coming around
Yeah.
this bend, and then it gets really slow, and then it dropped off where it got slow. And I was walking him through like how I would pick apart this water. And
So the river
that's
splits here, right?
where
Well, there's
No,
a
it's a bend.
this is a huge U bend right
got it,
here.
got it,
yeah.
got it, got it. Okay,
Yeah.
Cool.
got it.
All right, there's the crew.
Yeah, there's the
Looking
gang from
good.
left to right. My dad, my brother-in-law Josh, his dad, and my father-in-law Robert. That was out in a meadow in Jackson. That was cool.
Cool.
On the right is us brother-in-laws being goofy underneath the typical Jackson photo. This is interesting. My dad and I, on the last day in Montana, we went off by ourselves and did a 6-mile hike out to a meadow creek. But before you get there, we were in rancher land, and this guy's cows would not move, and they blocked us for 5 or 10 minutes, and then eventually my dad got out and like corralled them, basically clapping and whistling, and I would like
You just drive
yeah,
through them, man.
yeah.
You just drive through.
It was fun. Yeah.
Move.
Cool. I like it. I like it. Well, that sounds pretty epic. That is an awesome trip.
Yep.
Mike, what's happening in your world?
Man, our youngest is no longer in the full-size car seat and can jump into a booster, and I do not have to climb in the back and buckle kids anymore.
Isn't that an amazing?
Graduated.
Yep, that's amazing when that happens.
Yeah. Little wins.
Little win.
But that happened recently,
Yeah, little wins.
and I love it. Kids, go load up, and I'm done.
Yep.
That's my part now. You know, there was a time when it was buckle 3, right?
Yeah.
Uno, dos, tres. Make sure everybody's secure. And then you go down to 2, and then you go down to 1, and then you go down to just go load up. So, you know, for many, not as epic as Henry's fly fishing trip, but a little win
Just as epic
in these seasons.
just as epic.
The
and that
next one
matters.
is when I say, you 3, go shower. We're not there yet. That's a ways off. But I'm looking forward to that one.
No, the most epic after that is, hey, here are the keys. Go pick your sister up at her sister's house.
Right.
That is
Right.
awesome.
I told Cam, and we joke about it. I said, buddy, I cannot wait until I just say, hey, run over to the store and grab me some more iced tea.
Exactly.
But so
Exactly.
here's what's cool. He's been mowing the lawn for a couple months now, which has been, that's been fun. You know, kind of a big sort of rite of passage thing for our son, and, you know, pushing the mower around, and I still help him a little bit. We have a big trampoline that he can't move.
Yep.
I've got to move the trampoline. I unload the grass because that, you know, that bag can get pretty heavy for him, but he mows. So, you know, I help, but I haven't mowed the grass in a
I
couple
have to
months
say
now.
something. On a side note, shout out to Nick. He cut my grass while I
my
was
word.
gone,
Oh.
and the text messages that he was sending me had me crying. He was like, "Dude, what did you do to your grass? I'm 4 laps through, and I can't even notice the difference."
Yes,
Yeah, and you know what he said to me? I said, what is wrong with that guy? I said to Nick, I said, what is wrong with Henry? And Nick looks at me and he goes, he's an apartment guy that bought a house.
That's true.
You have to mow your yard.
Henry, we were making fun of you without you being
Oh
president.
man,
That's fine. That's
we
fine.
were. I have pictures here. I forgot to throw them up there because we were going to roll you under the bus.
That's fine.
We were
I
gonna-
knew what I know I messed up. I'll admit it.
I knew I messed up. Oh my goodness! All right, guys. Well, hey. So in a quick, short update, I got to tell you this. So when you buy things, I'm going to talk about buying the new airplane. I bought the new airplane. I did a good pre-buy. The plane is freaking awesome. I love it. But you never know when you go into your first annual inspection for the year. What don't you know about this airplane yet? And so I found what I didn't know about the airplane yet, flying back from Durango back to Denver, hour and 8-minute flight. I'm up at 19,000 feet, in and out of the clouds. And I start to get this flashing voltage light on my dashboard. And I'm like, I should watch that. And then it goes from a flashing voltage light to all of a sudden, and it flashes, and then it goes off. And I'm like, okay. And then it flashes again, and then it goes off. I'm like, I should watch that. And then I watch, and the ammeter starts going like this.
What is that monitoring
The voltage,
for us non-pilots?
the power is the alternator
Okay.
making power, or are you drawing off the battery?
Because that's running all the plane systems off the engine.
It's running all of the electrical systems of the
Okay,
airplane.
okay.
So your power plant, this is why airplanes use magnetos. They separate the power plant, which is the engine, from all of the electrical and avionics systems. So they're two separate systems. And so the alternator drives the electrical systems so that you don't draw off of the battery, right? The battery's there as a battery backup.
Yep.
It drives the alternator. Then you have a voltage regulator, and then you have the battery, and then the wires. So as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, maybe it's just a loose wire, because the engine in this airplane is a big 6-cylinder Continental engine. It's big, and it's very possible that a wire came loose just from all the force and the heat and the everything, right? And so I'm watching it, and I think maybe it's a loose wire. No big deal. But then the ammeter starts just swinging, so it's drawing off of the battery, and then it's good, and then it's drawing off of the battery, and then it's good. I'm thinking, that's not good, because I know that I've got a fully glass panel, and I know I've got about 30 minutes. If I were to lose the alternator or the voltage regulator or lose power, I've got about 30 minutes on the battery, and then I'm going to lose everything. And so I'm watching this, and I'm watching my distance back to my airport, and I'm watching this happen, and I'm thinking, if I draw off of the battery, am I close enough that I can get in before the battery dies and everything goes black?
And what was the answer to that question?
The answer was I almost diverted into Gunnison, Colorado, Durango to Denver. I almost diverted into Gunnison, but I'm like, no, my ammeter is holding steady and my light's off. It was wonking out a little bit, and then it came back, and I'm like, okay, it's back right now. I'm going to go past Gunnison, because I could always drop into Buena Vista. And then I get up towards Buena Vista, and I'm literally 19,000 feet flying over Buena Vista. And I'm like, okay, it's solid. Like, it's not doing anything. So I keep going, because then I look from Buena Vista back to my airport. It was like 22 minutes. And I'm
So
like,
now you were okay. Or you
I've got
thought
it.
you were.
I've got 8 minutes of leeway to get back in there. And so I kept going, and ultimately at the end of the day, then I had my mechanic go look at it, and he's like, man, all the wires are solid. Everything is good. What that is an indication of, and this happened to me in the old airplane too. I was out flying one day, and I got the warning indication light, and yada yada yada. Long story short, I lost all my battery power, my electrical power, and then the battery.
So I don't know that story.
Yeah, I have a video on it.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
Anyway, I lost, and so I ended up having to divert. But with that airplane, it's all steam. It was steam gauges mostly at the time, so I didn't lose my flight control.
Okay.
I only lost my electrical, my navigation, my radios, my comms, that kind of stuff. In the new plane, it's all glass, so I lose a lot more. I still have an airspeed indicator. I still have a artificial horizon. I still have some gauges there to help. But anyway, long story short, I made it back and I figured out that it was the alternator. It's not the voltage regulator, and it is a motor powered. It's not a belt powered. It's a motor coupled powered alternator. The alternator was probably going bad because the wires were good and the voltage regulator was good because we were getting power through the voltage regulator. When the voltage regulator goes bad, you lose that power throughput. Anyway, so $2,000 later, I'm putting a new alternator on the airplane.
I was wondering if I should ask. I was like, because I did an alternator in my truck and it was $240.
Yeah.
But
yeah, well,
not in an airplane.
The alternator itself, well, I could have bought a refurbished one or a new one. I bought a new one. It was a $200 difference. I bought a new one. I'm like, you know what? If I'm gonna do it now, I'm just gonna put.
Yeah, and for $200.
For $200, I'm gonna put a brand new one on there. So I put a new alternator, and then I don't know that the drive coupler is bad. I think it's probably good, but rather than putting a new alternator and leaving an old drive coupler, I just bought both of them, and so we'll see what we end up doing. They'll arrive tomorrow.
Cool. How long does the install on that take?
Half a day.
Okay.
Yeah, a few hours. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a pretty simple thing to do. So, it'll show up I drop shipped it to the mechanic shop. It'll show up there tomorrow, 10:30. Should have it done by the end of the day or by noon the next morning, depending on when they can get
You're flying soon, right? Aren't you?
Yeah, that's the thing. We're flying a lot. So
I have a question. Let's just hypothetically say it did go black and your comms go out and you're on approach. What is the SOP as far as communicate? Like, let's just say you haven't got a plan yet. They haven't given you clearance and landing and all that stuff.
If you lose radios,
yeah, like let's just say you cannot communicate with traffic control, and they see you on their radar approaching, but they have not cleared you at all.
So that's why if you're on an instrument flight plan, that's why you fly your clearance all the way. So if they can't establish radio communication with you, you fly your clearance all the way, and they'll clear traffic out for you because they know what you're going to go do. If you're not on an instrument flight plan, if you're just flying out there VFR, not talking to anybody, now people don't know what you're going to do. So there's a couple things. Number one, you squawk, you put into your plane a number, a code, and that tells air traffic control that you've lost comms. So they now know that you've lost comms. Now, if you're going into a non-towered airport, the other pilots don't necessarily know that. So it's incumbent on you to watch. You squawk your lost comms code, you watch, and then what I always do is I fly in my flight bag. I have a handheld comm radio that I always keep powered. I could turn it on and I could just talk on the handheld. So that's
smart.
That's the process.
Plan B. It's like if you want to go to a certain Chipotle, but say they're out of iced tea.
In no way is there a parallel here.
There's a total parallel.
There's not.
You just have to know where the other one is nearby. Plan B.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is how it works.
That's right. So when I lost my voltage regulator on the old plane, and then I lost battery power, I had to, I have battery gear, battery driven gear, battery driven flaps, battery driven. Yeah. So I had to manually extend my gear. I had to land flaps up. Actually, no. What I did there is I put my flaps to approach flaps before I got back to the airport. So I kind of limped back slowly. Today, I would have probably left my flaps up, and I would have just landed no flaps, but
just landed faster.
Yeah.
Does new plane have a manual gear deploy? Manual landing gear, or is it all powered?
Yeah. No,
Is there always a manual?
You can always.
Okay. You can always crank them
retract.
down.
Yeah,
Got
you
it.
can always crank the gear down.
Okay.
There's an emergency procedure for
Got it.
all that stuff. But all right, guys. Well, let's jump back into the topic at hand. From the man, we talked just smack for 20 minutes.
Yeah, but as soon as you go airplane,
I know.
I can get pulled into that.
Yeah.
No, like I feel bad about I want to talk more airplane, but I feel bad about it for our listeners because, so listeners, tell us in the comments, like, do you want to hear us talk about ramble
Here's the
about this
deal.
stuff, or should we get more into like real estate stuff
Faster.
faster? Right.
The airplane loving listeners are thinking, why are we done talking about airplanes?
I
already?
know,
right.
I know. And then some people are like, this is the most boring show I've ever listened to ever. I mean, we are pretty interesting. I mean, if we're being truthful.
And Henry asked the airplane question.
Well, that to your point, he gets going, and I'm like, my brain's like, well, what would happen if this happens? And
right.
I'm like,
Because you can't just pull off the road.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
totally the case.
Yeah.
Like we were talking, he showed me the plane the other day and talking about it, and it was like, man, you told me about that America tried to get owning a plane to be basically like owning a car. Wasn't that right, Rob?
Yeah, back in the 50s and 60s, post-war, people, were coming back from the war. They were, that's when all the brick ranch subdivisions were being built across the country. Like middle-class America was being built post-war, and general aviation was taking off, right? You had so many men that had been in the war and flying airplanes in the war, and then they came back and they wanted to continue. They had been trained and they wanted to continue flying airplanes. So the general aviation world took off in the 50s and 60s.
Pun intended.
Literally took off, and takeoffs are optional, landings are mandatory. Right? Little side note. Anyway, so yes, they tried to push general aviation and make it like owning a car. Like you wanted the family sedan, you wanted the family airplane. And it never quite went that mainstream, but it was very popular back in the 50s and 60s. But it's such a different responsibility to jump in and fly, and a level of training and a level of knowledge and a level of everything
Yes.
than jumping in your car and driving down to the burger joint.
Yeah, that's why
Right.
it blew my mind. I was like, whoa, that's so crazy.
Yeah.
To make
So
that
I didn't
push.
I didn't know about the post-war correlation. That's fascinating, but that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, that's why you see so many,
Thousands of pilots.
1960s,
Yeah, yeah.
1970s airplanes.
Yeah.
The 50s there were, but that era is starting to disappear. Those planes, but you still get a lot of late 60s, early to mid 70s, and then it just kind of ramps up from there. The fleet.
Interesting.
So, all right, guys, let's get into this. So when we left off last time, we were talking about organize before you automate, and then the ability to keep simple buckets inside of your CRM and then apply customized automations to your real estate investing business as desired or as needed. And one of the things that we got into talking about last time was the reason people tend to ultimately go that way. When you first start, you're not tracking what list is performing the best. You're not tracking what marketing effort is performing the best. You're just doing stuff. You're building a list and doing stuff, and you're hoping you get a lead. And you're hoping that lead accepts your offer. You're hoping that offer gets across the finish line. There's a lot of just sort of bucket everything together. As your business evolves and gets, I'm going to say more serious, but as you become a little bit more knowledgeable and you're driving for specific performant results, you start to say what list is performing the best. You start to say what marketing effort is performing the best. You start to say with what list and with what marketing effort am I producing the cheapest leads? And then what combination am I producing the cheapest contracts? And at what combination am I producing the cheapest deals? And so you start to look at these things and you might say, man, I'm getting really, really cheap leads with this combination, but none of them are going across the finish line. They're blowing up, or they're not accepting my offer. I got a ton of leads, but it's not going anywhere. Or you might say, I've got more expensive leads here, but my cost per deal is like I'm getting deals across the finish line. And so you get to a place in your real estate investing journey as you start to build your business and take it to that level of seriousness where you want to know the answers to these questions. So where we left off was talking a little bit about your information, Henry. And I'm going to bring in my own personal experience, what I see, in my own business, what I've seen in customers' businesses over the years, and we'll kind of talk about some ranges. But let's start with the real world discussion of, okay, Henry, you're doing your list building, you're sending direct mail, you're capturing inbound leads, you're letting the software trigger automations, you're keeping the buckets organized, and then you're making offers and taking deals across the finish line. Talk to us a little bit about the numbers, the math, the strategy behind that.
Yeah, and so to kind of preface this, where this came from, and I actually had a conversation with a user yesterday, and the way that I teach it and describe it is, you have to find your personal sweet spot, like in your market, right? Because what works for me may not work somewhere else. 100%. And then I'm going to have to start from the same situation I started in the market that I'm in now, and then find out works there. And then I continue doing what I'm doing here, but slightly change over there. And what made me say that to that user was that he is about to launch a TV commercial, a TV ad across 2 or 3 markets, and that he was also tossing around the idea of also simultaneously building lists and doing direct mail. And I said, the cool thing about how we're going to set up your FreedomSoft account is that you're going to immediately know which type of marketing is hitting the best in these 3 areas. And I didn't warn him, but I said, what you may find interesting is that what's working over here with this postcard, with this TV ad, with this and that is going to be different than over here on the left, right?
Yep.
And then you'll be able to, copy paste or slightly diverge, right? So for me, what I've found is, on average, in my whole direct mail campaign that I've been sending across, coming up on 2.5 years now, my cost per lead ends up being around $55 to $60. And that's from every list I've ever built combined into one group, basically.
Yep.
So let's just say that's 25,000 people,
yep.
right? All the leads that I've generated, my cost per lead there is, let's say 55, right down the middle. And then from there, again, that's 25,000 people that I've potentially mailed at least once. Some of them have gotten mail 2 to 3 times, right?
That's 25,000 unique mailings sent, probably a smaller list.
Yep.
Right? Probably.
Flip that, what I just said, upside down. So that's
probably 3,000 to 5,000 unique people that you've mailed 7 to 8 times.
Yep. Yeah, so I had the numbers backwards. Yeah,
Yep.
So that's in total unique people, let's call it 5,000, that have gotten mail 1, 2, 3, sometimes some of them, the good list. Again, this is where you find out what's working, so you want to keep hitting those people, hitting the same list. So some people maybe 4 or 5 times.
Let me say something on that front really quick, because I think this is important. Sometimes people will come in and they will do it the easy way, right? They'll bucket everything together in FreedomSoft to begin with, and then they'll evolve to a point where, okay, they've closed a deal, they've closed 2, they're closing regularly, and they want to get a little bit more granular and understand the math. One of the beautiful things about FreedomSoft is if you start with the blending it all together model, but then you want to later go in and run some filters and apply some analysis and say, okay, I got everything sort of grouped together and I can't see the transparency, but I want to go in and break it apart later. You can always do that. You can go in and you can break things apart. Now, you may not, if you bucket it together at the beginning, you may not be able to say this list, this marketing campaign produced this specifically. But what you can start to do, and I think this is where you were going and what you did, you can say, okay, what lists have I been hitting? You can do some duplicate analysis to go back and say, okay, what list did they come from? You can figure that out. You can then say what marketing effort is driving it, but then you can say, okay, what zip codes are producing? Like where I'm spending X dollars per zip code. What zip codes are producing? Then you can say, well, what is the makeup of that zip code? You know, what type of opportunities live inside of this zip code? So you can do the reverse analysis inside of FreedomSoft, even if you don't start with that granularity to begin with.
Yeah. So, I mean, so what got me to that point was, and this is the cool thing about FreedomSoft is, you know, as you find your sweet spot, you may know your monthly spend. Like on average, let's just say I want to spend $2,500 a month on direct mail, right? And then I go into FreedomSoft and I say, okay, I know for a fact these two lists and the people within them are performing really well for me.
Yep.
And the vast majority of those people in those lists right now have gotten mail once, and I need to mail them twice. But the makeup of those people only gets me to a spend of $2,000. So I have $500 to work with. I have some house money to then go around and start testing, right?
Yep.
So that got me into, okay, well, I know this is working, but let's split test. I have $500 or $1,000 extra dollars on my monthly spend because all the people that I want to mail are going to get it, and I have some money to work with here. So let's go and try to build another list. And then the next month rolls around, you can rinse and repeat. What performed, what didn't perform, where can I start moving the sliders to get me to where my sweet spot is, basically.
Well, so we talked a little bit about this on the math, like the specific math, and you are generally sending how much mail per month, and kind of what are the response rates and what is that producing?
Yeah, so on average, I like to send to at least 1,000 people, but I try to get it up to over 1,500 to 2,000 people, and that's mailings per month. So, you know, quick math that I do in my head is it's going to be around 50 cents a postcard. So then divide every one of those numbers by 2, and that's my monthly spend. So I try to get it to around 2,000 to 2,500 people per month, whatever list they are in, right? And if kind of like what I just said recently, if I can't get to that number, then I have the freedom now to go and test other types of lists and other zip codes and other counties and maybe push out, get a little creative, and then see how that works the following month. But yeah.
Because if I go up the chain a little bit and break down what you're saying, what you've done is you've identified certain zip codes that are your target areas. Because you, in the Freedom Formula phased approach to what we teach people, you are generating cash but also building cash flow.
Yeah, so that's actually a big point, is because I also build my list in the areas that I want to be currently buying in as well. And I didn't know that until I started purchasing. Prior to that, you know, and I've told the story, is that, you know, the first couple lists I built were just like, throw it on the dartboard, basically, wherever it hits. So it was like everywhere. And I generated a lot of leads. And this goes back to what you just said, is a lot of leads, but not a lot of deals or contracts signed. And that was because they were just in the bad areas. So you have to find the happy mesh between good amount of leads, but also people buying, right? And that's important. So again, found my sweet spot to where, you know, it's a good mesh of both, but at the same time, I'm in stage 2, building cash flow. So I always like to be cherry picking. So I make sure the list that I'm building, the people that I'm mailing, there's always a potential for me to be interested in myself.
Well, and that's what it is, right? So I always call this the honey hole, right? It's the areas in any metropolitan zone or geography where there's enough distressed potential inventory with enough investor active buyer activity that they overlap. And so because because you've moved to phase 2 and cash flow creation, that doesn't mean you've left phase 1, right? So you've got to blend the two together. You've got to still be generating cash so that you can continue to build the cash flow. That's how those two things loop together. So what you did in the beginning was you sort of went broad stroke and said, I'm gonna do marketing. Here's where I see the activity. Here's where a ton of distressed inventory. Here's where a bunch of vacant houses are. Here's where a bunch of tired landlord addresses are. And so you sent out marketing. You got a ton of leads. You made offers on those, but then the problem was there was a ton of distressed inventory. There just wasn't the buying activity for the level of distress that was there.
Yeah, and on that point, like you can do a little pre-rec like research to kind of help yourself out that, but I would argue, like now that I went through it, what I don't want people to hear is that I need to make sure that I know where not to go. Right. And focus on that wholeheartedly, and then just waste a lot of time and a lot of effort just digging too much in the weeds.
Right.
I would say, and I, 2 years ago, I would not have said this, but now I can say it because I believe in it. That was money well spent to not get deals closed in those areas because it was knowledge that I learned. I was still on the phone. I was still making offers.
Yep.
So if I didn't go through those conversations, when the good conversations rolled around, I may not have been as good on the phone as I am now. Right. And I wouldn't have understand the process, and I wouldn't have had the buyers list at that point. So I still consider that an investment for the money that would have been made a year later.
100%.
And you don't know until you don't know. And also in that note, not every one of those leads that ended up, like I still closed deals. There were still deals that got closed, and I was learning along the way. So it wasn't a complete wash.
Yep.
So I don't want people to hear, oh, you gotta know everything about it until you dive into the market.
Right.
I didn't know any of that until I took action, and that was really the main thing.
Well, and what you want to do then is like the tools in FreedomSoft, Zip Finder in particular, guides you to take action in the right directions. It guides you to the right places. You start there with your budget, and then you learn. So I think what happens is people sometimes have a misconception or a misexpectation on what should happen with their first 1,000 postcards. Mm-hmm. They send out 1,000 postcards and they think, oh, I'm gonna make so much money. Maybe, sending 1,000 postcards is gonna cost you $500. Well, $500, your cost per deal, your average cost per deal might not be $500. Your average cost per deal might be $3,000, which means you would have to spend $500 7 times to get your first deal. So this is where people oftentimes give up too early. They're not willing to spend that $500 seven times.
Yeah, because we did the math, right? Because a lot of people just hear the initial conversation and say, Henry sent mail to 2,000 people and he does 2 to 3 deals a month. Well, we backtracked my math just a second ago.
Yep.
And my cost per deal is actually somewhere around $2 to $3 grand.
Yep.
Right. So if I was only sending mail today to 1,000 people, based off my statistics, I would have to do that 4 times over before I get to that average wholesale deal that I do.
Exactly. So here's how some average math shakes out. And there's 3 numbers that I think are important for any real estate investor to know. And the more you spend and the bigger your business becomes, the more you need to know this at a granular level. And you might need to know this per list. You might need to know this per marketing campaign type. You might need to know this, right, by zip code. But here's the general information. You need to know your cost per lead. Okay, what does it cost you on average to get 1 lead? Some general ranges for people on a cost per lead basis is $15 to $50. Now, You just said your math was about $55 on average. So that means some of your marketing channels, some of your zip codes, some of your areas, your cost per lead's a little higher. Some of it, your cost per lead's a little bit lower. It averages in aggregate to about $55, which is on the higher end of the $15 to $50 cost per lead range. But here's why. It's because you're using one marketing medium, and that is direct mail. You're doing direct mail in all of the geographies, and you're doing nothing else. So you don't have bandit signs out there. You're not running PPC. You're not running a cold calling campaign. You're just doing direct mail. And so some of those things are going to be, your cost per lead is going to go down significantly versus direct mail is going to be a little bit on the higher side. And so if you're running a blended strategy with multiple different marketing types, you're probably going to be below the $50 range, but your cost per lead. So you want to know your cost per lead. The second thing you want to know is your cost per contract. And so inside a certain list, inside a certain geography, inside a certain marketing campaign type, what does it cost me to get a contract? So to make an offer and to get it accepted. And so typical ranges, now this is a big range, because it comes down to your skill level a lot as well. Your ranges on cost per contract are going to be anywhere from $250 to $1,000. Now that sounds like maybe a pretty big range, and you know, what do I do with that? Well, kind of track it, because the next number I'm going to tell you is the real big number I want people to put into their brain, because this is going to keep them taking the actions in the right step. So your cost per lead, your cost per contract, $250 to $1,000, and then your cost per deal. What does it cost you in marketing spend to produce a deal? Okay? And typical numbers are $2,500 to $4,000 cost per deal. So here's how that shakes out. If you're going to mail 1,000 postcards, 1,000 records every single month, and that costs you $500, and your cost per deal is $2,500. It takes $2,500 in marketing spend to produce one deal, and you only send 1,000 postcards a month. That means it's going to take you 5 months to get to your first deal. Okay? Now, what happens is somebody sends out 1,000 postcards and they get a deal on their first one. And they think, oh, my cost per deal is $500. It's not. Because guess what? If you only send 1,000 next month, you might not get a deal. You might not get a deal the month after that. You might not get a deal a month after that. And then all of a sudden you get your second deal. Well, you start to add all of that up, and you know, now your math starts to average out. So is it possible to be lower than that on cost per deal? Yeah. Every market is a little bit different. So we talk and we teach about virtual investing strategy a lot, right? And so in what I would consider an easy profit city, your cost per lead, your cost per contract, and your cost per deal is going to be a little bit lower, and your speed to deal is going to be faster. If you go into a non-easy profit city, so you go into a boom bust market, a higher priced market, your cost per lead, your cost per contract, and your cost per deal is going to be on the higher side, and it's going to take you longer to get a deal. Now, why would that be? Because in a non-easy profit city, the marketing spend you do is going to produce fewer leads. And so in order to get fewer leads to produce a contract, in order to get fewer contracts to produce a deal, it takes longer. And so like when you start to think about this from sort of an engineering standpoint, you can see it on a grid how this plays out. But knowing these numbers, or at least for our listeners right now, knowing these ranges, right? Cost per lead, $15 to $50. Cost per deal or cost per contract, $250 to $1,000, and then cost per deal, $2,500 to $4,000. Now you say, okay, well, what is my budget? What am I going to spend? I'm going to spend $500 this month. So you should expect $500. You should expect to get anywhere 500 divided by 15, 33 leads. 500 divided by 50, 10 leads. You should expect to get between 10 and 30 leads if you spend $500. Now, out of that, if you spend $500 and your cost per contract is $250 to $1,000, you should expect to get between 0 and 2 contracts. Offers accepted. Now, this assumes you did the work, right? You have to make the offer. And if your cost per deal averages $2,500 to $4,000 and you only spent $500, if you close a deal, party, celebrate, because you got lucky in the rolling of the dice that your marketing hit. And that person that was ready to go today responded and the deal got across the finish line. But you know how you get lucky?
Action.
You take
Consistent
action.
Activity, yeah.
You will get lucky more and more and more the more action you take.
The reason why I like talking about this is because I hope no one hears this and gets discouraged about this. I think this is more encouraging than ever, really, for me, because I think this allows, especially me, because I don't try to describe it as a numbers game, because you are taking action. You have to be doing stuff the whole time. But, if I abide by these numbers, the reason why I like direct mail so much and why it works for me, and if I were to launch into other marketing, which I definitely plan on doing, it would mimic the kind of style that direct mail does, meaning I get to pick who gets my marketing, and then I get to cross my arms and wait. And the reason why I like that is because when people see these numbers, I hope it strikes a fire to get really good at things after the lead generates.
Right.
Let the marketing and the numbers do their job, because they will.
Yep.
And just abide by these numbers, right? And then really hone in on your skill after the lead generates, because that's where you can really start to up your margin.
That's right.
Because what I learned by digging through all this stuff is that, one, area matters, but not all the time. What matters the most is price. Price cures everything. And as soon as I got just slightly better, I started closing more deals, because you up your number of contracts. Because you just said 0 to 2, but what if I could get it on average to 1 to 3? Right?
Yep.
That's one more extra deal
100%
that I'm closer to. So I hope people hear this and say, instead of really digging, because don't get me wrong, the stats matter, the area matters, the list matters, it matters. But once you figure that out, don't dive too heavy into overanalyzing, getting too deep in the weeds, when you can really, really focus on how you talk on the phone, how well you are at going through the script, running numbers, making offers, how fast you can move things to dispo. Like, that is where I think it really matters.
The marketing is a numbers game. It's an optimized numbers game, right? And so FreedomSoft, we help people optimize that numbers game by having pre-built, pre-selected lists that they can just click. They don't have to think, how do I get the right list? They can just select one of the pre-built lists. By having templates and marketing systems pre-built that people can just plug into. So the marketing side is an optimized numbers game. The conversion side, the thing that drives your cost per deal down, is your personal skill. Exactly to your point, right? Everybody can do the same marketing with different budgets, with different, input decisions as to, I'm going to do this list into this, into this direct mail campaign sequence and blah, blah, blah. right? And I'm going to spend $2,000 this month and not $500, right? So people have different input decisions, but we all have an equal playing field because of the technology and the tools available to drive the marketing.
Yeah. I have a funny story, and Joe, you're gonna know. I won't say any names because I don't want to call out another podcast on our podcast. But Joe and I follow somebody that they're a house buyer group out of North Carolina, and they do a lot of wholesale deals. And if you go on their Instagram account, and every time he brings up systems, software, lists, this and that, everyone in the comments is always like, "What list do you build? What works the best?"
Right.
But we know, and all us here in the room know, that the reason why they close so many deals is because they've got that honed in, but what they teach their guys on the phone is how good they are on the phone. That's why they get offers across the door.
100%.
So my question to you is, why do you think people's first knee-jerk reaction instinct is to ask those questions as far as like the silver bullet? That's what everyone asks. What list do you build? What marketing do you use? And what works the best?
Yep.
How much money do you spend? Instead of focusing on the other thing.
Because asking the question, what's the magic bullet, is easy, and it doesn't take any effort, work, skill. You don't have to work on yourself and get better. Asking the question on how do I talk to a seller better? How do I negotiate better? How do I solve a bigger problem? How do I do this? It requires you to make a decision that you are going to improve yourself versus just tell me what's working, and I want the result. I don't want the effort.
Right.
That's why. Now, that's why this conversation is so powerful for people, because the people that are listening to this that say, I get it. Okay, if I'm going to spend $500 a month, if that's my budget, I should expect that it might take me 5 to 10 months to get my first deal, and that's okay with that budget, right? And you know what I always tell people? If your current situation forces you into a budget allocation of $500 per month, number one, recognize that's okay. You do the thing consistently and improve your skill regularly, and you're going to get to a place where you take deals across the finish line. Your first deal, because Henry, we also talked about your average deal is $7,400.
Yeah, there's a whole second piece here that we need to
so
tie
let me
this bow up with.
we do for sure, and we'll tie this bow pretty quickly here. But what I want people to get is, you get your first deal. Have some patience. If you can't spend more money to produce the marketing today, spend it consistently, because that one deal is going to give you the cash to invest and accelerate the timeline of your second deal. So if the first deal takes you 5 months and then you close that deal, you make $7,500 and it costs you $2,500 to get there, you have $5,000 now, right? Celebrate. Take $1,000 out of that and go celebrate. Like, do something for yourself and say that was worth it, right? And then take the rest of the money and reinvest it back into your business. Now, this assumes that, right, we teach a whole process of cash flow management and what you should allocate your money to as part of the Real Estate Mogul Academy and how you should do it. But what I want people to do is celebrate their win. Celebrate the win, and then take the $4,000. Remember, they only had $500 a month before. Take the $4,000 and take $1,500 of it and go boom right into your marketing. Don't take all $4,000 because you haven't expanded your marketing, your list size and your geography enough yet to know where to allocate the full $4,000. So don't jump too far ahead of yourself, but take $1,500 and triple your marketing spend. And then the next month, $1,500, and you probably took a 5-month time frame and you just consolidated it down to 30 to 45 days. Now you got your second deal. You get another $7,500. Celebrate a little bit. And at some point, I say you can quote unquote stop celebrating and now start putting cash in the bank. Build your cash reserves. And But I want people to celebrate their wins responsibly. Don't take your first $7,000 and go buy a couch, right? But have a little bit of fun. Do something. And then
A couch? What couch is $7,000?
oh, I can show you. I can show you some pretty.
Yeah, that's super nice.
I thought you were gonna say Rolex, but you said
Oh.
couch.
No. I can show you. I can show you some pretty. I can show you a lounge chair.
Well, you could spend 70
maybe-
grand on a couch.
Yeah.
you wanted
Well,
to.
I'm going to show you. I've never bought this because
I was thinking about it.
oh man, they're so cool. But I'll save it for another show. People are gonna have to come back to see
Hey,
what lounge chair
when
would
you make
Rob
that-
buy and throw in his home office that is more than $7,000.
Kohler makes a $10,000 toilet that'll heat up the seat and play music to you.
I love it.
Yeah.
You better have a bidet.
Okay,
also.
so back to
It
the
serves
math.
lunch, Joe.
Back to the math. But hey, Joe, remind me to pull this up for you guys because I'm gonna show you guys this
Okay.
later. Okay. So in a future episode, we're gonna pull this up, and we'll talk lounge chairs.
I'm down.
For real? Okay. So I want people to celebrate, but then I want people to recognize that they're going to close and shorten the loop on their speed to deal. And that's what they're trying to accomplish. Close the loop on speed to deal such that you get to a point where now you can spend $3,000 a month on marketing and you guarantee yourself a closed deal, right? And nothing is ever guaranteed, but I'm going to say once you build up and you get to a certain spend per month, you have to close a deal. Like you're there because guys get to the point where they're spending money because they're trying to go from we know we're closing 10 deals a month and we want to get to 15. So they're going from spending $30,000 to $40,000 a month on marketing to they're trying to up it a little bit and they're going to spend $40,000 or $50,000 a month on marketing because they're trying to add with a little bit of leverage another 5 deals to the table. Well, start doing the math on that. That starts to be $35,000 to $40,000 a month for a $10,000 to $15,000 a month increase in marketing spend. That's why knowing your numbers is so important and why I'm such a big proponent of it.
Hey, I heard a really good quote, and the context of it was I thought this was really cool. It was some I don't even know where I found this. It was somehow a dad's message to his son, and it said there was a line in there. It was a bunch of things that were written out, but at some point in there was a line that says, "Son, I want you to know that you can never lose. You'll win or you'll learn.
Yep.
Those are the only 2 options. Go
Yep.
through life with that mindset.
100%.
That loss isn't even on the table."
That's right.
And so back to, we were talking about, well, what if I get started and nothing happens?
Yep.
Keep going.
Right.
Well, what if nothing happens then? Keep going. Right?
Yep.
Real estate investing wouldn't be an industry and a podcast, and it just wouldn't exist if it didn't work.
Yep.
So it works
Yep.
because millions of people have gone before you, right? You're not proving any,
Right.
you're not off, pioneering a new way to make money.
Right.
Right? Not by any stretch. So I love that mindset. I want to borrow that with my kids because I never heard it worded that way before. But just understand that as you get into this, there's only 2 options. You're going to win, right?
Yep.
Close deal, or you're going to learn.
Yep.
And that
Yep.
just makes you better next go around.
Yeah, and on top of that too, it's like I hope this motivates people, and I don't want them to feel discouraged. But and winning is going to look different for every one of these people that may be listening. So, what winning is to him is different to me, and what winning is to you is different from me.
Yep.
I have a vision of what winning looks like for me, and I know what it takes to get there, or at least I'm learning how to get there. So if your winning is you just want to close your first deal, and to do that you only have $500 a month to spend, that's awesome. The cool thing about us here in the office and the academy is that win is just as important as if I land a $20,000 assignment fee.
100%.
It's the same thing. Like
Yep.
it's just as cool.
Yep.
It's no different because what winning was to that person, they won. And what winning was to me is I won. It's just I don't want people to dive into the comparison game here.
Yeah, that's not
Yeah.
that's not it at all. You know, if somebody, and we're going to wrap this up, but if somebody wants to accelerate they're stuck at $500 a month is what they can do today. And somebody and they say, how do I get to that place where I can spend more? Well, it's either you're going to wait, you're going to have time. So you're going to have some time because it takes $500, boom, you have the success, you get a little bit of a cash influx, and now you turn your 500 into 1,500 that next month, and now you've accelerated, right? And so it either takes time or it takes effort. And what I mean by effort is you always want to ask yourself, how do I go produce, where's my highest earning income potential, right? And so when people, and so here's what people do. And I hope we don't get shadow banned for saying this, but, people say, I'm going to go drive Uber. I want to make a little bit of extra money. I'm going to go do DoorDash. I'm going to drive Uber. Well, those things are very much tied to the hours that you put in. So you put in hours and you produce an income. What I want people to think about is if you want to go from a $500 marketing budget to $1,000 to a $1,500 to a $2,000, how do you increase your income earning potential right now? Eventually, you're going to do it through time with real estate, but how do you do it right now? And it's disconnect your time from the value you produce. So I had, I helped my son when he was younger, Nick, start a little window washing business, right? And so it got to the point where as he got older and got into a professional career, he was making his income earning potential went up. And so he no longer had to do the window washing because he had exceeded what the window washing capacity was. He had a job that he was going to do. It was going to take him 8 hours and he was going to get paid like $1,400. And he's like, nah. He turned it down. And so it was going to take him a day to make $1,400, and it wasn't interesting enough to him. Now, that's the kind of thought process I want people to get to, right? If they need some extra cash or some money, what could they go do? Mow some lawns, right? Where you tell somebody I'll mow your lawn for $70 and it takes you 35 minutes. Well, that's a pretty good quote unquote hourly rate, but more important is it's disconnected the value you provided from the hours. Whole nother podcast, whole nother show that we could go into. Right. But I wanted people to get that if they're stuck at the $500 a month budget, they have two choices. They have to increase their earning capacity through effort, and there was a little tip on how to do it, or they have to be patient with time until that earning capacity kicks in from the real estate itself. So, I don't know, guys. With that, I think we're about wrapped.
Sweet. Love it.
All right.
So, Rob, you told me just real quick. You said, so Henry, using your numbers, $2,500 to $3,000 per deal.
Yep.
$7,500 average payday.
Yep.
So, Rob, we were sitting somewhere the other day, and you said if that was a slot machine, how many times would you pull the handle?
Right.
Put $2,500 in and get $7,500 out. How many times would you do it? That's how I think we pull this all together.
Right. And some people say, well, I don't have the $2,500 up to put in. And to that, I say, well, go figure out how to go get it. Because I would say everybody in America, everybody in the Western Hemisphere, everybody, most people in the world, not everywhere. There are some really places that struggle. But most people that are listening to this show have the capacity to go figure out how to increase their earning capacity if they're willing to think about it.
If you're willing to give up fancy coffee, that's $1,000 a month, roughly.
Right.
I'm not.
I'm
Are you,
not.
Henry?
Mm-mm.
No.
Not sure.
That was the dumbest suggestion I've heard.
You just don't drink coffee. And so it's like, that's the last 5 or 6 to get that average.
That's right.
If you guys remember the first show I was ever on, my first wholesale deal was like $950, right? I was net negative for months.
Right. But you were around us in the office, and you knew that net negative was banking towards your future success.
Yeah, the knowledge piece. Again, I'm okay eating that.
and the proximity. It was because you were around us talking to you regularly to say, bro, it's okay. Like, yeah, you're net negative, but here's what happens.
He's never called me bro.
Well, I do.
Joe was telling Henry he should quit and give up.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. All right, guys, that's a wrap. We've gone over. And hey, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening in. If you guys like this, do us a favor. Subscribe on YouTube. Hit that notifications bell so you get notified when we drop new episodes like this. And then subscribe on your favorite podcast player. Share it with your friends and tell everybody else to listen. We'll keep bringing the content and bringing the knowledge.
Hey,
See you in the next one. No, man.
Hey, I'm going to hit you because if you're interested in getting involved in some of this stuff, there are links in the description, right? You can get some info on our fastermogul.com. You can apply to the academy. So there's ways to get in proximity, the stuff you're talking about, Rob,
That's
right here with us. So
100%.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, I love it. I love it. All right, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Cheers.
Out.